Along with the ownership of a file or directory, the discussion would not be complete unless you also talked about the permissions of that file and or directory. So let me talk about permissions for a minute. The permissions control the access that a file owner, a group, or other user has to that file or directory. And those are generally broken up as follows. They either have read, write, or execute access. Read access allows them to view files. If it's on a directory, it allows them to list the contents of a directory. If the write permission is given to a file, it allows them to change the contents of a file or a directory. When we're talking about changing the contents of a directory, that means it allows them to add new files in the directory or delete files from the directory. When we're talking about the execute permission, if you set that on a file, it allows you to run the file or execute the file. Think of an executable file. Typically, you're not going to do this a lot, but I'll show you an example of it in a moment. If you set the execute permission on a directory, it allows for CDing or changing into that directory. So those are the three basic permissions: read, write, and execute. However, they're also assigned to the user, the group, and everyone else. So users can be assigned read, write, execute. The group can be assigned read, write, execute. And everyone else on the system could also be assigned their respective read, write, and execute permission. Now, the notation that's typically given is RWX, and that signifies the symbolic notation. If you see the 4, 2, and 1, that is what they call octal notation. And it's typically more concise, and I'll show you examples of each as we do this. So let me start off with an example over here. So if I do ls minus l, recall that we have permissions here. Now the permissions are actually given over here in this left column. And we already know R stands for read, W stands for write. And we don't see the execute bit set anywhere on this. And it's not very common to see that. So basically we can break them up in groups of 3. Those first 3 characters are representative of what the user can do. So the user can read and write. And as you look over in this next column, you can see that Charlie is the user. So Charlie can read and write to the file, meaning he can view the contents of the file, he can change the contents of the file. The next 3 characters are representative of what the group can do. The group is Cowboys, as indicated in this column. So anyone that's a member of the Cowboys group could read and write the file as well. Now, anyone else, anyone that's not Charlie and not a member of the Cowboys group, is what we call other. And other is represented by these last 3 characters. And you can see here that only can they read. Others on the system can only read the file. They are not allowed to write to the file. They are not allowed to execute. And so that's how you interpret the permissions of a file. In the next video, we will learn how to set permissions of a file or directory.